my life hasn't always been easy. And if you were to take time to read my book, one of the things you will find out is that I grew up in foster care. And part of that was due to the death of my twin sister at the hands of a stranger. And when Samantha talks about the things that we tell ourselves or the things that other people tell us about ourselves, growing up in foster care, I took on the beliefs of others about who I am and who I should be. And it wasn't until I was in my 40s, I'm in my 50s now, and I joined the Women's Leadership Challenge in my 40s with Samantha and an amazing group of women in our cohort. And Samantha helped me to unpack some of those things that I was holding on to. She also made me get real with myself and sit in those moments of places that I didn't want to sit in because it was uncomfortable. But in order to make it through the program and really understand where she was going and what she was trying to get us to see and realize, I had to sit in it. And it wasn't comfortable, but it was necessary. Um, Earlier, when you talked about speaking on our accomplishments, I was never one to brag about the things that I did. And oftentimes, other people got credit for it, right? And so in the class, we unpacked some situations where maybe that had happened, or how did we approach announcing our accomplishments. And it was so interesting because, in the same way, it took you all the time to actually put something in the chat. That was the awkward silence that we had in our cohort because we're not always used to bragging on ourselves, right? So I was watching the chat to see how quickly would someone post their accomplishment. And it's not uncommon for there to be a hesitation. But what you will learn from the Women's Leadership Challenge that Samantha mentioned is, if you don't do it, who will, right? And be you. Everyone else is taken, right? So just sit in who you are and be okay with that. And then I'll stop here with the values conversation. So until speaking with Samantha about identifying what my core values were, I would often accept new roles, knowing I didn't even want to be in it. I would often accept to be on boards that I didn't have interest in. Someone would come to me for something that wasn't even in my wheelhouse, and I'd be like, sure, I'll take it, right? And once I really was able to identify my values, that stopped. A perfect example is, I was in a conversation with my leader, and the comment was, oh, yeah, Lakysha, we know you have aspirations to be a vice president. And in the past, I would have been like, yeah, I do. Oh, my goodness, yes. And in this moment, my values showed up. My values was knocking on my shoulder, like, wait a minute. Yes, you want to be a VP, but you don't want to be a VP in this position that he's talking about. And so you need to speak up about that. And one of the things that I reflected on is that the values of the person that I would be reporting to didn't align well with me. With respect being top on my values. And when that conversation happened, I stood 10 toes down and firm that no, I'm not interested. That was 2 years ago. But the person that I would be reporting to, unfortunately, their values don't align with mine. And my husband always tells me the quickest way to get hired is to get fired. To get fired is to get hired. And so I knew if I had accepted that I probably would have been putting myself in a situation that wouldn't have been good for me, because I knew that my values did not align with this person.
You know, one of the things when you came into the Women's Leadership Challenge, you told me that somebody had said that you didn't have enough executive presence. And I remember when I talked to you the very first time and I said, this woman has so much presence. I have no idea what is happening here. And you know, what what was your experience, especially as a woman of color in the workplace, right? Understanding the difference between feedback that's based in discrimination and fighting against that versus actual feedback to learn from? And how do you navigate?
Yeah. So I think for me, it was really trying to understand what did that mean, right? And so I didn't let up on asking the questions. Well, what does that mean? Can you give me an example? And in the moments where examples couldn't be provided, I respectfully asked that they stop using that phrase when they described me, because they weren't able to share specifically what about my executive presence meant that I couldn't take it to the next level. What I later found out, Samantha, and we ended up unpacking this in one of your sessions, was that I was told that I was too much. I was way too much. My energy, I'm always positive. That was making people uncomfortable. And so I began looking for external validation from the people that I knew were probably the ones saying it. And it did me no good because it made me sick, because I was trying, I was like a hamster in a wheel. I was just trying to prove myself and be perfect for someone else's definition of what too much looks like. And so it was in that moment when it surfaced, it was right in the moment when we was in the classes. And, Samantha told me point blank, she says, Lakysha, don't listen to them people. She said, listen, you are who you are, and people navigate towards you because of who you are. And don't change that for anyone else who's uncomfortable, because maybe they aspire to do the things that you're doing. I even had one of my leaders say to me, you sure post a lot on LinkedIn. Imposter syndrome came in and stopped posting. And then I had Samantha knocking on my shoulder. What are you doing? Why you stop posting? Who cares? Right? Scroll on. If you don't want to read it, keep scrolling. So I think that it's important that when you go, if you decide, and I highly encourage that you decide to sign up for this Women's Leadership Challenge, you will learn so much about yourself, but also you will be given resources. And I appreciate real talk, and Samantha will give you real talk. And you get to be your authentic self truly amongst the women in your cohort. And you also kind of blend in with some of the other cohorts based on the program that she has, so that you get to hear from other women as well. But I will tell you that I'm leveraging the tools that Samantha, and when we talked about me joining this session today, I went back in the trenches and I found my notes and I started reading through it, and I was like, yeah, this is it. Oh yeah, I forgot all about this one. And so I started to pull out some things that I know will serve me well. I have moved on from an organization and now work at another company. And I'm really looking to do some really amazing things there as well. But it's a work in progress. It never stops. You never stop learning. You never stop growing. And you have to be open to sitting in those uncomfortable spaces so that you can get on the other side of it, to truly live in your authenticity, and then not care. At the end of the day, you live this life, no one else.